It's go time. Alrighty, folks, let's get this show on the road, shall we? Okay. All right. What's going on, everybody? Everyone have a good week so far? I'm happy to see everyone. Yeah? Did everyone survive Halloween last week? Yeah? No? Well, I'm glad to see you. How went your pumpkins? Good? I haven't looked at them yet. Yeah. Went good, though? Okay. It's good. We're actually going to talk about lighting today a little bit. So maybe we can resolve that lighting problem today. All right. Well, today we're going to, if we look over in Canvas, there's a couple things that we're going to be striving to accomplish this week. We're going to start talking directly about characters today, but we're going to start off with a simple, small little lab assignment just to kind of get us going, okay? And our lab assignment this week is going to really focus on lighting. And there's a couple things in here that I want to show you before we jump in and have you guys start working on it yourselves, okay? Kim, would you mind hitting the lights for me real fast? Thank you. So the fastest way, and I mean the fastest way, to ruin a great model is to light it poorly, very poorly, okay? So today we're going to look at the standard three-point lighting setup. If you go back to the beginning of class, one of the things that I talked about is that at times inside of our production pipeline, we have to wear a lot of hats. Some days we kind of have our little construction worker hat on. Other days we're going to have like our little French beret on because we like painting. Other days we're going to have our cinematographer hat on. And we're going to look at cameras and lights, okay? Keep in mind, we're fundamentally in the business of 2D. We're in the business of making pretty pictures, okay? So we need to look at the lighting setups inside of our scenes to ensure that we're crafting and molding, sculpting our objects with light. This takes a lot of practice, a tremendous amount of experience. Cinematographers spend their entire careers looking at where to place the lights in order to put the shadows where they want and to create the illusions that they're after, okay? We're going to be going over a classic lighting setup today called the three-point lighting setup. And actually, it's going to be more like the five-point lighting setup. But this three-point lighting setup is going to allow us to start to shape our objects in 3D. It's really, really, really easy, believe it or not, to make a flat, two-dimensional picture with our 3D modeling tool set. If we're strategic in where we place the lights and how we place the lights, we'll create a picture that's a little bit more interesting. It'll look three-dimensional and have a really good sense of depth, okay? So today we're going to focus initially on our lighting, and then we'll start talking about some character modeling ideas as we go through the rest of the course today. All right, so let's jump in. Let's take a look-see at what we got here. All right. So I'm going to start off, and I really encourage you to follow along in this entire process, okay? I'm going to start off by loading in a mesh preset. So you hit the F6 key inside of your keyboard. Let's see, I'm going to go into the interior section, and I believe it's under decorative accessories. Let's find it. Dun, 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 dun. Yep, there it is. I want to use this vase right here. It's one of my favorite vases. I love to use this model as an example because it's going to provide some unique challenges for us when it comes to lighting. Okay, so there it is. That's all the lighting that we're going to do today. Let's jump over into our render layout so we can start exploring how the light and the render engine is going to be working together to create the illusion that we're after. So when we're going through the process of placing lights, we need to lock down the camera composition pretty fast. And I mean pretty almost instantaneously, okay? You know, we want to make sure that we're placing our lights in the correct location to camera, right? The product of every single project in here is going to be a picture. So the camera composition is critical. It's the most important idea, okay? So I'm just going to establish a really nice composition here. That's pretty good, okay? I like it. It's filling the frame. The focal point of this picture is pretty apparent. And let's start really critically analyzing the lighting setup that the default, kind of render settings are producing for us. So right now, there are two active ingredients, if you will, inside the lighting setup for our little scene here. First and foremost, if you look at the directional or the item list, the direction, yeah. Mm-hmm. This vase? Yeah.
Yeah, I can't find it either.
It's in the mesh preset library. Okay. Okay. It'd be helpful if just one person talked. Okay. So if you have the mesh preset library open, F6. Yep. And if F6 isn't doing anything for you, hold down the function key and then F6. Okay. And then specifically, I'm in the meshes section. And then down here, we have interior and then decorative accessories.
All I have under interior is jewelry.
Jewelry, okay.
You might want to reopen your message because it might not be actually loading on the
Yeah, oh no, no. Interior, decorative accessories. Yeah, there you go. All right, now if you don't have this mesh preset, don't worry about it. This is just a starting point, right? It could simply be a cylinder. Hey Craig, what's happening? What you got? Hold down the function key and then hit F6. That one, yep. No, F6. This one, not, yeah. Yeah, there you go.
That's probably what.
Okay.
Thank you.
So this is what you should have. Something very similar to this. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, close that. Hit the A key. There it is, yeah. All right, let's see if we can find it real fast. So go into Assets, open up Assets, find your meshes. Oh, okay. You don't, headset's fine. Yeah, and you really could use anything you want, right? Headset's cool. I like that. I thought you had said something else. Okay. You really could use anything you want for this simple little example. However, Jepson, I'm going to draw focus to you. The one thing I would recommend that you don't do is the really funky kind of really weird glass sculpture one. It's going to be very, very difficult to understand the impacts of all of these direct lighting sources in our scene initially with working with glass. So I recognize that this abstract sculpture one is rad, right? And it's got some really cool materials. It's neat. But for this example, pick something else, okay? All right, so if we go back and over to the render here, the directional light inside of our scene is doing a great job of providing general illumination inside of our scene, but it's really doing a horrible, horrible job of crafting a pretty picture. Now, from our earlier conversations, especially a couple weeks ago when we were doing our house, what is the function of the directional light? What light type in our universe does the directional light replicate? The sun. So it's really designed for exterior light sources, right? We're going to be creating a product shot, an image that should go in like a magazine, okay? Some commercial artwork for my little vase here. So I want to walk pretty fast away from that directional light type. Directional lights are an infinite wall of light that we cannot escape. When working with product photography or commercial artwork, we want to focus our light beams on certain areas so that we can control how the highlights and the shadows are impacting our audience's understanding of the artwork, okay? So we want to change our light types a little bit. One of the things that I like to do when exploring different lights is look at the shadows, okay? The shadows do a great job of helping us define how this light is going to be influencing our object itself, okay? So here's a quickie. I'm going to just jump out and once again hit the F6 key, okay, to bring open my preset library. And under the Basics section, I'm just going to double-click on the good old shadow catcher. Double-click. And now inside the scene, we have a simple two-dimensional plane that's catching the shadow and creating a lovely, cool little ground shadow over in here. I like that. That's pretty cool.
Can you repeat that?
So once again, I just went back into the Mesh preset library, okay? And this time, instead of going into the interior, section, I went to the Basics folder, and I double-clicked on good old shadow catcher. That way I can still see the impact of the background default environment, but we're getting that shadow in there as well. Now look carefully and look very closely for 1 second at the shadow that's being created by the directional light. How does it look?
Yeah, it doesn't look so smooth.
It doesn't look, yeah, it's very sharp, very crisp, okay? There's no jagged edges, which I like, okay? It doesn't really replicate our sense of an exterior light. That's not how our sun works. Luckily, we have a nice sunny day. If you were to go out and stand in the sun, your shadow wouldn't look like that at all, right?
Well, kind of like that fade at the edge. Or
Bingo. Does anyone remember the property that fades out our shadow?
soft shadow in the game set.
Yeah. But for here and us, if we were to explore the light properties,
It's the spread.
The spread angle, you got it. So I'm going to select my directional light. And over in my directional light properties, here we go. It's the spread angle. And a little bit of spread angle goes a long, long way. You don't need a whole lot. If I put mine at 3 degrees, now the render is starting to look a little bit more believable. Okay? The shadows do a really great job of reminding us quite instantaneously as to the effect of the light itself. Directional lights are very hard. They're very crisp. They're very, the shadows are almost very defined. So I try real hard only to use directional lights when I'm working with exterior light sources. Now for us, since we're making a product shot, what would be a good light to use for an interior? Let's explore it. It's a good question, right? Let's check it out. Okay. Now for an interior shot, I'm going to change it away from a directional light. Okay. We don't have to add a new light, although we certainly could by going to Add Item, Lights. Let me show you a great trick. This is today's power user trick. For lights, and this is almost exclusively for lights, if we were to right-click on an existing light, we can change the type of light to any one of the other Moto light types. And I'm going to start to let's do a point light. Okay. All right, so immediately the lighting setup inside of our scene changes. The point light properties are a little bit difficult to understand with the impact and the influence of that background environment shading our scene. I mentioned earlier that there's really two things inside of our lighting setup at the moment that's influencing the final render: the directional light and the background. That gray environment in the background is having a direct impact on our scene. So I want to make one small suggestion to you. We're going to turn off the influence of that background. We're going to turn off the global illumination system and see the impact of the direct lighting setup. Okay? The global illumination system casts environment rays from this sphere, because you're kind of like, imagine this little vase is sitting on the inside of the beach ball. Well, the inside color of the beach ball is tinting the rays that are getting to the vase. So I want to turn off that entire machine. If we go down into our render item, here's the first thing that we're going to do. So I got my render item selected, and then over here in our Properties tab, I'm going to go to my Global Illumination section, and where it says Indirect Illumination, I'm just going to turn this off. Okay? Now everything went dark. Interesting, right? But the background is still that gray gradient. By turning off the global illumination system, we're reducing, actually we've disabled the impact of that gray gradient on the lighting setup on the vase, but we actually haven't turned its visibility off. Yeah? The shadow catcher is under the Basics folder in your Mesh preset library. Just double click on it. And it should automatically get loaded into the scene. I'm sorry, Kim, say again? Okay. If you look at the 3D viewport, the shadow catcher is just a plane. Okay. So if you're, as an example, if I move that plane up, that's what I get, right? It intersects the object. So you want to make sure that the shadow catcher is either underneath it, yeah, underneath it. Okay, let's jump back in here real fast. So the first part is to turn the entire global illumination system off, okay? Because now the background is not influencing the lighting setup of our environment. But it's getting, see how it's getting a little speckly on the surface of the vase? That's the reflections of the vase surface characteristics picking up its environment, okay? To really understand our lighting setup, let's do one additional thing. I'm going to go over into my shader tree. And under the environment section, okay, so here's the background, that gray gradient. Here's the material that physically drives that background. And let's do this. I'm going to go over into my environment material and change the environment type from foregradient. Let's just do constant. So now it's just one color. And I want to change that color to black. So now, in every sense, what we've done is we've made a black box for our little vase to sit in. And this is an excellent place to begin because now, beyond any reasonable doubt, we can see the impact of our lights on the objects themselves. Yeah, sure. So there's a two-step process. Step numero uno is to turn off the global illumination system. And we do that by going into the render item. So the purple sphere right here. Global illumination in the properties tab. And then disable indirect illumination. Okay? That's step number one. Step number two is to turn off the influence of the background. Okay? We do that by going into the environment material itself. With that clicked, we can return to our properties panel, and simply, I changed my environment type from a 4-color gradient to a constant, which is basically just one color. Okay? And I changed that color here to black. I've made a black box. This is an excellent place to begin. And if you look at classic cinematographers, this is honestly how they light their sets. They turn off all the lights, they try to make it as dark as they can, and then they slowly add lights into the scene so they can understand the impact of each one of these lights. Okay? So it's supposed to be a kind of a methodical process, but it's one that's very controllable. Okay? So let's continue on with our work here. Now that we've made a little black box, we can start to see the impact of our point light inside of the scene. Here it is. It's pretty dim. We need to, those little fireflies, the little speckles on, that's coming from reflection rays. We don't have enough of them. More on that in a minute. All right. Yeah, yep. To constant, yep. And then constant color to black. Yeah, you got it.
Am I missing some steps here?
Okay, so did you turn global illumination off? Good. Now go into your environment material. And here, change it from 4-color to constant, and then change the constant color to black. All right. So now that we've got our black box, and I've closed the door, Meredith, excuse the reach. I'm going to close the curtains. We're working in with a black scene, so I want to try to get rid of all the light spill as much as I can. That'll do. Okay. Okay. Let's see where you are.
I've been trying to figure out why my stuff isn't.
Yeah. Okay. There we go. So let's do this. Let's go to the render environment, the render item, excuse me. This guy right here, the purple sphere. Okay. And if we go into the global illumination section, turn it off. That one right there. Cool. See how the lighting changed?
Yeah.
Now we want to get rid of that black background. We do that by going into the environments. Yep, open that one up. Oops. Little arrow. There you go. And under the environment material, you could turn it off, but we're going to do one small change. This is a better way of working with it. Change the 4-color gradient, constant, and then change the constant color to black. Yeah. That's fine. If it's very illuminated, that's fine. Is yours? Oh, you need to change the color to black.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
because I was like, I feel like I missed all of that.
There you go. Now we've made a black box. Okay?
Okay.
We've made a complete black box for our environment now, or for our object. Yeah, that's fine. That's good.
Then we can get the background like black.
Now, orbit down a little bit. So what are we looking at? Are we looking at the shadow catcher or the actual background? So your background is actually black. Well, it's something. Let's look at the texture layers here. Yeah, it's not black. It's dark, dark brown. You put that slider all the way down. There you go. Now it's black. Okay. This is the ground plane.
Oh, should I
Yeah.
just get rid of that?
I'd get rid of it. Yeah. You can. I mean, you can leave it in there. It's not going to harm it. Okay. Okay. Now that we have our black background and we've made a black box for our object to sit in, we can understand a little bit more directly the impact of all of our lights in our scene. And this is really the big picture idea here, is that we want to know, beyond any reasonable doubt, how each one of these lights is influencing the final product. Okay? Yeah.
So mine is still like completely lit up.
That's fine. Yeah, that's fine. Okay? So now we got to start messing with the lights. Now I changed my directional light into a point light. Okay? Does anyone remember how to do that? Yeah, just right click on the point light or the directional light and change type. And things are going to start to shift and change very directly. Okay? Okay. So if the directional light is like the sun, what in the world is a point light? Kinda. Now, I minimized my preview window here, which split my layout into a top and a bottom. And we can see down here in the OpenGL viewport the icon for the point light. In my imagination, the point light is like a candle. It's a single dot in space that's emitting light in every single direction. It's a point where light is coming from in all directions, like a light bulb or like a candle. Okay? The location of the point light is super, super critical on our understanding of the light inside the scene.
So Pat, why can't I select that point light?
I don't know. Are you in item mode?
Yeah, I see it. I just want me to select it.
Okay. Okay, because you're in polygon mode. You need to be in item mode. Lights are items. Okay, so I'm going to move my light closer. Okay. With directional lights, we really didn't super care about the position, the location of the directional light inside the scene. It was just the rotation properties that we were ultimately looking at, right? Point lights are kind of the exact opposite. We don't care about the rotation because the light is being emitted from every direction on the item itself, but we do very, very much so care about its location. Now, when it comes to lights in general, try to make sure you consider how light works out here in the real world. Okay, Modo is a physically based rendering engine, so the light rays inside of its rendering engine behave identically to the way that light rays work out here in good old Mother Earth. Okay, so the closer our lights get to an object, the brighter the light is going to appear. Yeah.
So how did you get the light to actually get to move the
Okay, so right now your OpenGL viewport is looking through the viewfinder of your camera. So change that to perspective. Okay, now zoom out and go find your light. Okay, there it is. There it is. Okay. Now someone has changed your selection state to pivots, so turn that off as one of our advanced students. There you go. Now you can start moving the light. Kim, did you have a question?
So you were saying when we went to change the light itself,
Mhm.
right?
Oh, I changed it up here, not down there.
Oh,
Yep.
okay.
And then change type.
And then change, right?
Yep.
And then it will.
Yep. There it goes.
All right.
Well,
I
I'm not sure why I
don't
didn't
know
go.
what's going on. 'Cause
That's weird. Let's get out of polygons. Change type. Point light. Here, I don't know what's going on. I don't care. So I'm just going to delete the light. And we'll just add in another one. Yeah. There we go.
Okay.
So now we need to start positioning the light inside the scene. Lisa, what you got? So, if you notice carefully down here, you're looking through the viewfinder of your camera. If you change that to perspective, yeah, okay, there you go. And there's the light up over there. So you can just navigate around, and we can start moving it if you'd like. Okay, yeah.
Mine's not showing that.
Showing what?
Like the one in the bottom.
Yes, it is.
I don't know how I do that.
I'm really confused. What are you trying to get towards?
It's supposed to look like that? Or
Can you believe what are you seeing that is incongruent with what I have
it's
on the
not
screen?
showing the arrows.
Well, that's because I got the move tool activated.
How do I do that?
What's the keyboard shortcut for moving a polygon?
Yeah, hold on.
W key.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I never did that.
All right. So if you want the impact of your light to be greater, move your light closer to the object, okay? We don't necessarily have to make it a super bright light and then change the intensity of our light. We can move them closer. Excuse me. See how the closer I get, my point light gets to my vase, the brighter it becomes. Super bright, and then as I pull it away, it gets pretty dim, okay? Say again? Yeah, well, this is just, a point light is just emitting light rays in every single direction. So it's kind of an uncontrollable light source. Yeah, these are cheap, fast renders, okay? However, point lights, not the best, okay? Not the best. The point light is kind of like, I think it really was maybe the first or second light type that was created way back in the late 70s when this entire industry was coming out, okay? It's kind of an uncontrollable light type. It's good for general illumination. If you want light just kind of going everywhere, pools of light, point lights are great. I use point lights a lot, actually, okay? They're nice light types to fill in the shadows. But as you can see, I really can't shape the light. I can't control it. I can't point it in a very specific direction. The entire area is being influenced by the control of the point light, okay? So while these are good lights to very quickly shape our scene with some light, the shadow types are pretty ugly. And I'm going to get my light just a little bit closer here. Yeah.
I noticed that.
Not so great when it comes to shadows, okay? That's not so hot. Yeah, look at that. That's not so hot. Yeah, it's pretty bleh, as they say, okay? We can do better, okay? I don't like it at all because I want to see a nice roll off of the shadow, okay? It's clipping the shadow on one side, okay? If you look at the fall off, it's very, very quick, okay? It's almost creating almost kind of a clipped shadow into the background itself, which is kind of making it just an ugly picture, right? If this picture is intended to go into a magazine, the ad agency that's been hiring me would never hire me again if I gave them this, right? Because this is just fundamentally an ugly picture, right? We can do better, and we want to be able to control and shape our model with the lights that we're producing, okay? So let's change our light a little bit again, and then this time, instead of using the point light, we're going to change it one more time, and this time we're going to do spotlight. So if the directional light's like the sun, and the point light is like a light bulb, the spotlight is like a flashlight, okay? It's the best of both worlds, okay? There we go. And now, check it out, we got a little bit of a fall off here. I want to minimize my preview window just for 1 second so we can look at how the light shows up in our OpenGL viewport downstairs. Now, the spotlight is not too dissimilar from a spotlight that you would see in a theater, okay? It's got a location. The rotation actually changes the beam angle of the light itself. So we can now start to influence directly which parts of our scene are being illuminated, which is incredibly neat. Let me show you what I'm talking about here. Start my preview. I got my spotlight selected downstairs, and now I can both move, okay, and rotate my light. Yeah, spotlights need to have their intensity cranked up to have a big impact on them, right? Yeah. Let me do this real fast. I'm going to turn off my shadow catcher, and I'm going to create a simple, on a new mesh item, a simple two-dimensional plane. So I want to show you something here. Okay. With that two-dimensional plane downstairs, you can start to see the impact of the spotlight. It really is like one of those spotlight that you see in the theater. With the spotlight selected, check it out. This is kind of fun. I get to change that fall off, okay? If you look at the cone angle that's being created in the OpenGL viewport, we have a widget. If I turn on the item transform tool, or just the W key, okay, this outside ring will allow me to change the actual cone angle itself. So now I can create a very small pinpoint light, okay? Or I can make it pretty big and illuminate a much larger area. I want to shrink that outside circle down a little bit. And if you look at the other one, this one here is going to control often what's referred to as the penumbra, right? This is the soft edge value inside the properties, okay? At its defaults, we get a nice kind of a medium grade fall off. There's a little bit of a blurred edge there. If I was to drag up, now it's a hard, crisp edge, kind of ugly. Hit undo. Or I could bring it down, and now I get a much larger and softer fall off. Okay? Point lights are pretty neat. Spotlights are pretty neat. I like using spotlights. I found, and someone ran into this earlier, to really get a good amount of control from the spotlight, you need one of two things. A, you have to have your light pretty close to your object. Okay? That's pretty close. Sometimes having the lights close to our objects can get in the way. They can illuminate the wrong thing. So having it further away may, in certain situations, be what we need. But we'll have to increase the radiant intensity quite a bit to make the light brighter. Let's put that to 10. Yeah, and now it's significantly brighter inside the scene. Yeah. Spotlights have to be pretty intense, okay? Ta-da! Now it looks like an actor on a stage almost, okay? So spotlights in every sense are kind of like gigantic fancy flashlights, okay? Once again, look at the shadow that's being created though by the spotlight. Super crisp, very dark, very defined. For product photography, there's another light type that I like to suggest that people explore. It's called the area light. Area lights are kind of like gigantic soft boxes. It's called an area light because the light rays that are emitted from our light are only going to be emitted within a very specific area in the environment itself. Let me show you what I'm talking about. I'm going to change my light type once again. This time, we're going to choose area light. It's the first one on the list. All right, let's start my preview engine, and now look what it's doing. Okay, look at the shadow that this area light is creating on my simple little ground plane there. That's pretty attractive, right? It's nice and soft, very, it's not attention grabbing. I've learned from my experience with lighting that the more prominent the shadow, the more attention grabbing it is. No one wants to see shadows. That's not what we're here to do. We need to be aware of them. But in often cases, we need to minimize their importance inside the actual picture itself. I did a lot of television work before I started teaching. And have you guys ever been down to a television studio, like down to KCRA or News 10 here in town? I spent a lot of time on KCRA. I did a lot of work at KCRA for a time. You work in a studio. If you go down to any of these big television studios and sit at the news anchor desk, you're going to be bombarded. It's like stepping into the surface of the sun, right? You're going to be bombarded by about 40 lights, okay? It is extremely warm underneath those cinema lights, okay? Even with the LED lights that they use today, just because of the sheer number of them that are being used to illuminate the news anchors, it gets hot, right? And they have to have 1,000 different lights because they're trying to make their news anchors look, kind of like silly mannequins, which is stupid, but it is what it is. It's the aesthetic of the evening news, right? They don't want to have a single shadow on any of the faces. Shoot, they even have lights on the floor blasting back up to eliminate the shadows being created underneath their noses, right? The more lights that we have, the more kind of general illumination we have within the scene itself. Okay, point being, we like soft shadows as much as we can. Hard shadows tend to be a little bit more distracting. In my opinion, they're kind of ugly and something that we should try to avoid as much as we can. So area lights are fantastic because they give us these soft shadows almost for free, which is pretty cool, okay? If you look at what's going on in the OpenGL viewport, this little square, this guy right down here, this is the area in which the light rays are being emitted from, and only being emitted from that little volume, which is why they get the name area light, okay? Now, if I hit the Y key, which is the item transform tool, the boundaries of our area light, oops, I'm all zoomed in, so it's going crazy. The boundaries of our area light will allow me to increase and decrease the volume of light, okay? Bigger lights, create this wonderful illusion that our light rays are wrapping around our objects, okay? It feels almost like a three-dimensional light type when we use these wonderful big soft boxes. When our lights are small, the boundaries of our model tend to get a little dark. the light rays don't wrap around and curve around our subject. So big lights are kind of cool. They can be pretty helpful. But as one might imagine, the bigger the light, the bigger the general cast of illumination inside the scene. So there's a balance here that we're trying to find. I want to make my light just a little bit smaller so I can control it a little bit more directly. So I really like the area lights. Area lights are great for the type of photography that we're going to be doing this week for our lab assignment, a product shot. Okay. If we get the light closer, there we go. Now we can start sculpting and molding our object with light. It's a little too bright. I did this intentionally because I wanted to show you guys something that we're trying to avoid, which is called blowout or clipping. This is what a blown out image looks like, okay? Where the detail on the interior of our subject just goes all white, pure white, 255 white, right? The maximum color value that's available to us inside of our color space. When something clips like this and gets blown out, we never can adjust its color again. Okay, once the pixel is created pure white, it's always going to be the brightest pixel inside the scene. So we want to be very, very careful of how bright the highlights are appearing inside of our photographs. Okay, this is way, 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 way too bright. So I need to start dialing its intensity back to get something that generally kind of works for the photograph I'm trying to make. And there are a couple of different ways that we can do this. Okay. I think I mentioned before that Moto is a physically based lighting setup. Okay, it follows some pretty direct rules that happen naturally in our physical universe. There's a law of physics called the inverse square law that determines the decay rate of light rays coming out of their light source. And we're pretty happy to. This is actually something that's not equal in our rendering world. Not all lights in our applications use this inverse square law as the foundation for their lighting setup. It basically states that the closer the light is to the object, the more intense the light rays are. Okay, the further it is away, and there's a mathematical formula that determines the decay rate. The further it is away, the visual intensity on our object is lessened. Okay, so we don't necessarily have to increase and decrease the intensity of our light. Physically moving our light closer and then moving it further away will resolve our issue. I like to keep my lights generally kind of close to the subject that they're going to be illuminating so I can control it. So I know which lights are going to be influencing which objects inside of the scene. Now I think for my purposes this is a little bit too bright. Yeah, it's a little bit too bright. That highlight, that's a little extreme for me. I'm clipping and blowing out all the pixels in that area. I want this to be the brightest part of my render, but I don't want it to go pure white. Okay, I don't want it to clip. So I'm going to bring down the intensity of my light. And let's just do it by, I don't know, let's put it down to 15. Let's put it down to 12. Yeah, that's pretty good. I'm happy with that. Okay. All right. Once we have our light's intensity set, the next thing that we have to do is start exploring color. Okay. Color is an important part of every lighting setup. Pop quiz, hot shots. How many real-world white lights are there? 0. Physically impossible to create a pure white light. So we want to change the color of all of our Moto lights so that we start replicating what we naturally see out here in the real world. Okay? So color. Okay. So I think we talked about this a couple weeks ago, but it's so cool that I want to talk about it again. Because light color is kind of a bread and butter idea for us in the cinematography world, right? It's something that we're always thinking about, light temperature. If we were to go outside and take our fancy little light meter, okay? I should have brought my light meter with me today. Actually, I have a light meter. Take my light meter, measure the intensity of the light rays hitting the meter. It's not going to produce an RGB value, okay? It's going to produce a temperature value, and that temperature is measured in Kelvin, okay, down here at the bottom. So this is cool that they're starting to expose that property for us here inside the Moto Color Picker. One thing that's kind of neat is in your color model. Right now it's at HSV, hue, saturation, and value. We could change it to Kelvin, okay? And now we can start interactively changing the light temperature of our object, okay? lights are always going to be shades of yellow and shades of blue. Okay, they're either going to be pretty warm or pretty cool. Fluorescent lights, pop quiz, what color temperature are fluorescent lights? Yeah, they're more blue, but sometimes they appear to be green. Okay, blues, natural light sources, tungsten-based light bulbs, the sun, for example, those are all shades of yellow and orange. You know, my office lamp is on, but my blinds are closed. But if you look very carefully, the light coming out of my office is very, very orange. That's because it's just a single tungsten bulb in there, right? That light temperature is 3200. Very, very orange, okay? If you don't know the light temperatures, this little handy-dandy preset browser will help you out, okay? Tungsten lamps, okay? 500-watt light bulb, okay? Or a 500-watt, studio lamp. Here's a household tungsten bulbs. So here's a candle flame, which is very, very orange. Okay, and you can see the impact that's having on our lights almost immediately. Now, I don't think I want my light source to be orange, and I certainly don't want it to be white. I think I want to have it maybe slightly yellow, like this. That's a good place to begin. Okay, I like that. That's starting to work pretty well for my purposes. So you have the shadow catcher on. I've turned my shadow catcher off, and I'm using just a single polygon down underneath my vase to kind of produce the illusion of the floor. Okay. The shadow catcher usually it's not. Yeah, it's not going to be evaluated by the light at all. It's not going to change the hue. Yeah. Okay. So if you look at what we got going on here, this is starting to look pretty cool. However, we're kind of blasting our object with light right now. It's only, if you look very carefully at how the light is sculpting our object, 3/4 of the front face of my cylinder here is being wrapped in light, okay? We've almost completely flattened out the image. It almost looks two-dimensional. In order for something to look three-dimensional, we have to have a change in tonal value. Uh-oh. Should we get into a little art today? Yeah? Does any of you guys take a traditional figure drawing class or a drawing class? Yeah? If you haven't, you need to go take a figure drawing class next semester, okay? It's a universal skill. It's required, in my opinion. And one of the first things that your teacher is going to require you to do in a figure drawing class, or even just any drawing class, is for you to understand the impact and purpose of tonal value, okay? Let's just talk about it for a second, because it's so important. We've got to explore it. Now, I'm going to butcher it, because it's impossible to do. With a dry erase marker. But I'll do my best. Here come the lights for a second. Okay. Okay. So tonal value. Blah, 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 blah. This is why I invested in this rolling whiteboard. This is it. $200 well spent, in my opinion. Okay. So tonal values. Okay. So if you take a figure drawing class, the first thing, it's usually the first assignment of the class, right? You draw a whole series of squares, okay? Something similar to this. Now, I'm only going to do 4 of them, okay? And then the next part of the assignment is this. Your instructor says, okay, take this one, leave it alone. This color, this cube here represents pure white. It's the brightest part of your image, okay? Don't touch this one. This one over here on the far left, take your pencil or whatever it is that you're using, and I want you to make it as dark as you possibly can. Okay? This square represents pure black. Okay? Make this one as black as you possibly can, as dark as you can with your pencil. Now we've defined pure black, pure white. Our challenge is figuring out how we transition between black and white. What are the gray values going to be? Okay? So many gray values. Now, like I said, it's going to be impossible for me to do this with a dry erase marker, but it could be something like this. Okay?
There's like at least 100 different.
Oh, yeah. But within the context of your artwork, you need to define the range of values that you're going to be illustrating in. Okay? So that could be the next value brighter. Okay? And then, so this is like 100% black, 50% black, 25% black, 0% black. Okay? So then the next value would look something like this. this shift in color is called tonal value. It's the gradient of grayscale values from black to white, okay? We need to produce that same kind of shift in tonal value across our imagery. We don't want to have the tonal value of our little vase here be all 100% white. We want to have some areas that are in complete darkness, some areas that are like a little bit brighter, and some areas very, very bright, okay? In the classic cinematography sense, this is called the contrast ratio. And cinematographers spend a tremendous amount of time and energy establishing their contrast ratio. Let's take a look at how we can establish this contrast ratio in the context of our little vase, okay? So, here's ultimately what you don't want to do. This is the rookie mistake that everyone does at least once in their careers, okay? And I'm going to look at my scene, and I'm going to grab my area light, and I'm simply going to move it so that it's in line with the camera. Something not too dissimilar to that. Okay, so if you look at the image now, oh man, that's a flattened image, okay? It really doesn't have an extreme change in tonal value going across the image itself. The intensity of light on the boundaries of our vase are pretty much the exact same. It changes a little bit, but not enough to make a difference, as the tonal value in the front of the vase, right? Ultimately, what we want to have here is one side that's in lightness, the other side that's in darkness, okay? I just moved the light so that it's directly in front of my camera. All right, let's keep cruising here. So if you look at my setup, if you're curious, so my light is directly in front of my camera. Now, in order for us to start sculpting our light and to have that really nice change in tonal value going across our cylinder, we want to light our objects from the side. Very rarely do we put a light right in front of our camera, right? We put our lights on the sides of our cameras. That way we can control the amount of illumination happening across our surface. Let's just do it real fast. So I'm going to move my light. I'm going to point it that way a little bit. Okay. Get it a little bit closer. Right in there is pretty good. I like to tip mine down a little bit as well. Now if we look at it, oh man, that's so much better. Let's do another render. Let's see what we get. All right, so there it is with it being lit from the side. So we have one side that's pretty well illuminated. Then we get this nice soft fall off as it goes into shadow. And then this side over here, it's pretty dark, okay? So flat shaded, right? That's a pretty stark difference. And so there's where the beginning one with the light just right in front of the camera, flattens out the image. Now, check it out. We have a nice shadow. We have one side that's in lightness, the other side that's in darkness. We're starting to create a three-dimensional image. However, this light or this side over here is too dark. Okay? It's way too dark. We don't want to have a prominent part of our image be in complete darkness. This is like a 1:2 contrast ratio, right? Super bright next to super dark. That's not so hot. I want to be able to control the shadow size a little bit. So we're going to start adding in another light, okay? In the grand context, what we've created here initially is called the key light. Let's just name it. The key light is the one light inside of our scene here that creates the illusion of primary illumination, right? To the audience member, they're just going to see this picture in a magazine, and they're going to think that this entire thing, this entire vase was illuminated by one light, okay? In reality, there's going to be 3 or more lights all working together to sculpt our object in illumination. So the key light is the brightest light in the scene, and it's supposed to look as though this is the one light whose sole purpose is, whose sole outcome is to light our scene, okay? So we're going to add in another one. We're going to add in another one whose primary purpose is just to fill in the shadows on this side. so that I can control how much illumination I'm getting on that right side of the vase. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to go over to my item list, simply right-click and choose Duplicate. Now I got 2. But I have 2 in the exact same spot. I don't want 2 in the exact same spot. I want the other one on this side. Something like that. Let's start the preview engine again and see what we get. Whoa! Okay. Different, yeah. It's just an area light. It's just, and I just renamed it to key light. Yeah. So the second one, it's a duplicate of the first. This is going to be the fill light. Oh, wait. I'm being silly. It's my dorky joke. I do it every semester, right? But mostly it's just to see if anyone's paying attention. Jaden, you get the gold star for the day. He was paying attention. Craig was paying attention too because he's smiling. All right. So the fill light, its sole purpose is to illuminate the shadow side, is to fill in the shadows with a little bit of illumination, okay? Right now, mission failure, right? Because it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming the fill light, or excuse me, the key light. I apologize. So I'm just going to start dialing down the intensity. The key light should be the brightest light in your entire scene. The fill light, now we're talking artistry, where we get to pick and choose what we want that light illumination to be. There we go. Now it's getting darker. Let's put this down to 1. Ooh, that's interesting. Okay. If you look very carefully here, now we're still getting detail in our vase, which is great. Okay. Shoot, if we were to turn off the fill light, that's with it off. Here's with it on. So it is having a big impact on our readability on that right side of the vase. We're creating a nice transition in tonal values going across the surface of our object, and we're continuing to sculpt our object in light. All right, so 2 of the 3 lights done. We get the key light, the primary light source in the scene. The fill light's going to fill in that shadow side. Okay. And the third light's called the rim light, and the purpose of the rim light is to provide separation from the background. Now, I want you to look at kind of like the shoulder area of our little vase here. It almost looks, in my eye, like the background is wrapping itself around the shoulder area of our vase, okay? It doesn't look like there's any sort of separation between the back side of the vase and the back side of our environment, okay? I want to produce that separation by adding a third light into the mix, and this is a pretty fun one. This is called the rim light. So this time I'm going to add a new light into the mix. It's going to be an area light once again. I like area lights. Area lights are cool. Okay. And I need to be very careful. Now, if you look at my OpenGL viewport, which way is my third light facing in my 3-dimensional scene? Away, yeah. It's facing the opposite direction that I want it to. How do we know that it's facing away from our object? Yeah, these arrows determine the orientation of the light rays inside the scene itself. So I'm actually illuminating the background of my scene right now, which is clearly not what I'm after, okay? So I need to rotate my light 180 degrees, and specifically, I want to shine it at the shoulders of my vase. Somewhere right around in there. Let's start the preview engine. Yeah, look at that. That's pretty fantastic, okay? Now, one of the things that we can do in here, and let's just experiment with this. What if I make it a really narrow band versus a really big band? Whoa, if I made it a really big band, check it out. We get this nice little highlight that's running down the back side of our shoulders. Okay? That's pretty neat. It may be a little too intense. That illusion is kind of overwhelming the final product of our shot. No problem. Let's just dial down the intensity of the light. There we go. Let's make a picture now and see what the computer gives us. So with all 3 of these lights in play, we're starting to sculpt and mold and continue to shape our objects with light. We want to have these changes in tonal value wrap around the surface of our object and also produce a nice, healthy sense of separation between the foreground, our vase, and the background. Let's walk through the renders that we've created so far. So here's the ugly one. Okay. That's just a singular light right in front of the camera. Flattens out the image almost instantly, right? Then we add in the key light, and then we add in the fill and the rim light, and it's starting to take shape. That's pretty neat. However, one major problem that we need to solve, okay? I want you to look very, very closely at the surface of my vase. Look at it here in this shot, okay? I want you to take note of the shadows on the ground, and I also want you to look very closely at the specular highlights that are being created on the actual light, or on the actual vase itself. As we've talked earlier in the semester about, the specular highlight is what? What is it? Yeah, oftentimes it's just that bright spot that ends up on, kind of that hot spot on the surface of our objects, right? In actuality, it's a reflection of the light source itself. A quick examination of our vase presents a really big-time problem for us. What is my problem? It's not showing a real reflection, and that's okay. In this context, I don't need really true reflections of the light source. We're never going to see it or appreciate it. Okay. However, the problem is I have two specular highlights. Okay. In all honesty, we have 3 specular highlights. Okay. 3. If you go back in time a couple minutes ago, I said the big goal of this is to make this entire picture look as though it's being illuminated by one light. Right? One light. One ground shadow, one specular highlight. That's ultimately what we're after. Mo lights, mo problems. Okay? Whenever we add a light, we add a shadow and a specular highlight. Luckily for us, I can interactively go in and disable all of that simply by adjusting our light properties. Here's the first specular highlight that's being generated by our key light. Here is the second specular highlight that's being generated by our rim light, and our third one we can't see because it's on the back side of the vase. But watch what happens when I start to go into my light properties and adjust this. Okay? Okay, now this happens down here in our shader tree. Of course, we have our environment material that was determining the color of our background. But if we explore the contents of our light, check out each light here has its own material. Okay? So I want to leave the fill or the key light alone. The fill light, I got its material selected. Check it out. Over in the light material properties, of course we can go in and change the color of things. Okay? But look at this. We can tell it to affect specular. What happens if I turn this off to 0%? Yeah, look. Now that specular highlight that was hanging out over here goes away. There's with it on. Here's with it off. The illusion is starting to become a little bit more complete. Okay? So this happens in the light material itself. Here's the fill light and its light properties. There we go. Oh, wait, I grabbed the right one? Yeah. There we go. Just turn it off. I want to do the same thing for my rim light. Effect specular is also off. Now, with effect specular off for my rim light, the illusion just gets shot. It's like it's not even on at the moment, right? So we may want to adjust the intensity of that. In addition, one of the things that I like to explore from time to time is just changing the shape of my rim light. Sometimes just modulating the shape will change the illusion. Yeah, I think I liked it before. So I want to, on my rim light, I'm not going to go all the way down to 0. Maybe I'll go to 50. Yeah, that's really good. Oh, yeah, it's awesome. Now it's there, but it's not super prominent. It's not grabbing our attention. Okay? Ultimately, we want the key light's specular highlight to be the brightest part of our entire image. Okay? Everything else is a value darker than that 100% over here. Okay. Last but not least, so we managed the specular highlight problem. Now we've got to manage our shadows. If we were to go back into our render window here, let's do a render real fast. One of the things that we had initially on our first one, you can see it here. Look at this wonderful shadow coming across the ground. Okay, I want that singular shadow. Shadows give our audience such a great immediate chunk of information. I want one shadow. Okay. As we've marched through our renders, our shadows have been decreased. Okay, we're actually getting a couple shadows. Okay, we're getting a whole series of shadows. If you look very carefully, and I recognize that it is tough to see, we're actually getting the shadow over here. You can just barely see some dark shadow rays coming from this side. You can also see some shadow rays coming over here. Okay, all things that we can and should change inside of our render. Okay, luckily for us, this is really super easy. Check it out. If I select my my fill light in its properties, not the light material properties now, just the light properties themselves, the shadow type is set to ray traced, but I can just say, hey, don't make a shadow at all. And now check it out, that prominent shadow that's being created from our key light stays in. The shadow that we got over there is going away. Do the same thing for my my area light. Now we're getting a really great, simply defined shadow on the floor of our scene. Cool, huh? Now, if we really wanted to make it look like a picture, okay, maybe we can go in and start changing some properties of our base material, right? I like to do this on my base material. If I wanted to make it look fancy pants, okay, let's increase the specular amount. Oh, I'm all zoomed in. And I want to decrease my roughness. Yeah, now it's starting to look like a little mirrored finish down there at the bottom. Let's render it out now and see what we get. Ta-da! Pretty great. So this is where we began, and this is where we ended. What's also really great about this three-point lighting setup is that we can change the color of our lights and continue to shape and create kind of abstract paintings if we wanted to. Okay? Like for example, one of the things that I look to do on a lot of my fill lights is that I go the opposite direction in color. Because right now the color is yellow. What happens, and let's just change my color mode back to HSV. What happens if I go kind of like blue? That's sweet. It's pretty cool. It's different. Different. Kind of have the sunlight on one side and the moonlight on the other. Point being is that now we get to kind of paint in abstract colors if we'd like. What happens if we go like really green? That's interesting. Kind of competes with the colors of the texture map on the vase itself, but it just gives us creative control. Oh, that's fun. Oh yeah, that's awesome. Look at that. That's pretty neat. Because now we're continuing to sculpt our object. We're changing its visual interpretation with lights. So our lab assignment this week is to basically walk through this entire sequence one more time. Okay? I want you to create a three-point lighting setup using one of the mesh presets found inside of Modo. Okay? All right, so under the, oh, my bad. I'm sorry, folks. I knew I was forgetting to do something. Forgot to activate that page. Oh, wait, why is it not showing up on mine? Oh, I just didn't scroll down far enough. I'm a dork. I'm such a dork. It's been a long day for me. It really has. So under the lighting lab, I want you to run through and create and use a three-point lighting setup to make a product shot, a piece of fine art, if you will, that's going to show up inside with the intent of showing up inside of like a commercial magazine. We're trying to sell something now, okay? So the three-point lighting setup is a great place to begin. It's a strong lighting setup that's going to give you some really, really great results, okay? You can use whatever mesh presets that you like. Don't use the vase. That's the only thing you're not allowed to do, right? So if anyone turns in the vase, I'd be like, Seth is like, damn, I got to do it again. Yeah, I want you to do it again, right? So no vases, no vases. I want you to try it one more time with a different mesh preset. This is going to be your bread and butter lighting setup going forward. Most things in our world are iterations of the three-point lighting setup. Of course, naturally, you can add more lights into this. A lot of folks start to add in a background light to start to change and sculpt your background. You can get really creative with it, but I want you to start doing it one more time. So at the conclusion of your lab work this week, make sure you're handing in a JPEG, please, of your final render and your Moto project file. Okay? Sound good? Everyone understand what the lab assignment's going to be? Let's do it. Let's get to work, as they say.
So, Pat, I have a question.
Okay?
Why my presets, I had a ton, and now I only have a base?
Did you download it from the cloud?
So,
Oh, I have it on
okay. battery. Okay, here we go. Sorry about that. All right, so for our homework this week, we're going to be building a robot. Okay, and this is really our first exploration, if you will, into the art of character modeling. Now, I'm choosing a robot mostly because it gives us a great soft introduction to the world of character modeling. It allows us to combine our existing skill set in hard surface with a new skill set of exploring the shape for some sort of humanoid-ish character. Okay, it's going to be pretty fun. I want to just kind of draw focus to some of the details here real fast. Then we'll get going. So here's my little final render for my product shot. You guys are checking this out while we're in lab. Just as a small, quick comparison, this is where we began, and this is where we ended. Oops, that's where we ended. Okay, so that's a pretty stark difference. One light, and I got about 8 lights in there. Okay. The more lights that we add, it increases the visual fidelity of the final picture.
So you have, is that 2 lights connected?
I can show you.
For the wall, is the wall portion?
So for the background,
Okay.
I created a little cyclorama. Okay.
Yeah, because I was going to say that doesn't look quite right, but
Yep. And I got
it does look right.
a couple spotlights here, a big spotlight on the back. If you look at the final result itself, just many of you guys were witnessing me just playing around with color. Yeah, it's kind of fun. And you could fiddle with this all day long. There really is no wrong way to do this. You just want to make sure that you're managing the shadows and the specular highlights accordingly. Adding a little bit of a bump map down here at the bottom starts to give the ground a little bit more of a role, a little bit more prominence inside the final picture itself. So you can have a tremendous amount of fun with it. All right, let's jump back over to Canvas here real fast. Let's talk about your character, your robot. Okay. All right, so this is going to be due next week. So for our homework this week, you're going to be building a robot. It can be any robot that you like. I would encourage you to make your own robot, something that's unique, something that's personal to you, something that you have a very strong connection with. Stay away like 10,000 yards from existing robots, icons. So no R2-D2s, no nothing from Doctor Who. I forgot the name of the robot in the Doctor Who. The Daleks, yeah. Yeah, no. Well, maybe Buck Rogers. That's a little old school. So but why do we want to stray away from these icons? They've been done too much. They really have. Honestly, they have. If I have to see one more really bad X-Wing starfighter in a portfolio, I think I'm going to gouge my eyes out. I really am, right? With these icons, it's hit or miss, right? It's either a really, 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 really great reproduction of that iconic robot or spaceship or what have you, or it's really bad, right? We've all been looking at R2-D2 for the past 30 years. We know what R2-D2 is supposed to look like. If you are 1% off of creating R2-D2, your viewer is going to go, that doesn't look like R2-D2. I know what R2-D2 looks like. That is definitely not it. And immediately your audience members have checked out. They've shuffled your image into the garbage can. They moved on, right? So stay away from icons, okay? Like the plague. Try not to go anywhere close to them. Make your own, okay? I say always be inspired by your own personal life, okay? Look at the things around you. The cool thing about a robot is that it doesn't have to really look like anything, right? It has to look humanoid. So there has to be some sort of suggestion of maybe a face, some sort of suggestion of an eyeball, maybe some sort of suggestion of some basic human anatomy like a torso and a leg. But that's about it. On the inside, we can be as creative as we want. Here are 3 really great examples of what I'm talking about. Now, I didn't make these. These are pictures that I found online. But I thought they were such a wonderful encapsulation of this idea, right? That our robots don't necessarily have to look like anything, but they need to look a little bit like a human, okay? So these robots clearly made from pieces of junk, light bulbs, transistors, voltmeters. This looks like a part of an old cash register here. Really cool, great amalgams of all these different pieces all melded together to make the illusion of some sort of walking, talking robot, okay? That's an excellent place to begin. It really is. So don't feel like you have to create, C-3PO or R2-D2. That's not this assignment. I want you to make your own character. I want you to make your own robot, okay? We're going to be using our hard surface modeling skills. However, if you'd like to continue to go in and add detail with the sculpting tools that we talked about last week, I say thumbs up. There's no reason not to do that, but save that detailing until the end. When you're making a unique character like this, the first step that we need to go through is a conceptual stage where we're literally painting with a broad brushstroke. When you're designing characters, you want to design the entire character in a whole series of passes. Okay? Did I show you my house and how I did the passes with that house a couple weeks ago? We want to go through the exact same practice again. Far too often, the mistake that people make when they're designing characters is that they'll focus on one really intense detail and they'll forget the rest of the painting. Okay? We're not trying to create a really fantastic eyeball that's really super detailed. We're trying to create an entire character in 3D. So do this in stages, complete stages. Do a quick rough out stage. Let me show you some ideas that will help you. All right, let me start a new project file here. Okay, so the first thing that we need to establish is proportion. Okay, proportion is the hardest thing for 3D modelers to really rein in when there's a zillion details that we now need to manage. Okay, think of the big picture, the macro first, and then we'll go in and get really specific with the details. Okay, all right. So I'm gonna just I have no idea what I'm doing here, but I'm just gonna start with a cube. Okay. This is going to be the chest of my little robot, okay? And as a good 3D modeler, I'm going to center this first, get this right smack dab at the origin of the scene. I've turned the visibility of my grid off, okay? There it is. If you look at it from the front, this is starting to look pretty great. One of the things that I try to do when I'm designing characters is that absolutely I want to make sure that they're aligned to the origin of the scene. That way I can work smart, not hard. I can use the mirroring tools, and if I'd like, I can also enable the symmetry tools so that the left side can be worked on at the exact same time as the right side. Okay? Let me show you what that looks like because it's pretty neat. In addition, the third thing that I like to do when I'm modeling characters is that I try to get the feet right smack dab at the center of the y-axis. So right in here, I try to get the feet standing on the grid. That's helpful for us. It gives us a nice understanding of how the ground in that plane is influencing our visual understanding of the character itself. Okay? So if this is the chest, how big is this character? Right? Maybe, I don't know, something right around in there. Okay? Let's get the feet in here. Shoot, the feet could be just a whole series of cubes. Now, I'm just trying to do this as fast as I possibly can. I'm not really trying to spend a whole lot of time figuring out details. I'm not trying to create a perfect mesh initially. Here, I just had an idea. Haha, an idea has presented itself. I want my character to have a gigantic wheel. Let me center this along the z-axis. Okay. And so this is going to be the bottom wheel down here. I'm going to try to get that. I could accurately get it down there, but yep, that's looking pretty good. Now let's center this along the x-axis. Okay, awesome. So if this is going to be the wheel, I want this to be the base of my character, the kind of the main proportion of it. Oops, I accidentally put it on two different meshes, so let me cut and paste here. How big does this need to be in relationship to this big wheel? I think that wheel is just gigantic now that I look at it. Maybe perhaps a little too big. Yeah, maybe to create it. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Now it kind of looks like my character is kind of like a racing bot to a certain degree, with the mass more towards the front of the wheel. Now it's presenting the illusion in my imagination that this character just wants to go. It wants to go forward, right? That could be a cool idea to continue to work with. Maybe I went a little too far with it. But I want to ideate as much as I can. That's kind of neat. Let's give this thing some thickness. How big is that wheel going to be? Let's center it again back on the X. This thing is way too big. If this is the size of my wheel, the size of my central mass of my character is just gigantic in relationship to that wheel, right? So I need to start making some changes. Now, a second ago, I said that we can work in symmetry, and the symmetry tools are really neat. It allows us to work on both sides of the x-axis at the same time. We can enable them by going right up here to the top and turning on symmetry. Right now, my symmetry is set to the x, so anything that I do to one side is automatically going to be done to the other. So I can grab, I'm in edges now, grab that top, bottom edge. See how it's doing both sides at the same time? Maybe, I'm going to turn it off here for a second. So I'm just playing here right now. I'm just playing with shapes. I'm playing with forms. I don't know what this thing is going to look like, but ultimately at this stage of the production of my character, it's only a couple polygons. I'm able to go through all of my iterations extraordinarily fast, and that's the idea of this initial stage. Remember, when you're creating something new, you don't necessarily know what it's going to look like, okay? So we want to give ourselves the opportunity to explore that shape, to make changes quickly, and to iterate and ideate, as they say, pretty rapidly. Sometimes just blocking out some basic forms is really what you need, like maybe having, like, how big is the head going to be? What shape is the head? I don't know. I really don't know. Let's find out. Maybe it tapers. Maybe it comes out a little bit and then comes in. Just doing simple modeling here to very quickly establish some simple primary forms of my character going forward. I'm not trying to make a high resolution mesh. I'm just trying to explore potentially what this whole thing could look like. Okay? That's interesting. More kind of a headlight shaped head. It looks teeny tiny in comparison to the base of my mesh. That's a little too big, right? But these decisions cannot be made if I focus exclusively on the head without seeing the size of the head in relationship to the size of the body. Okay? Just trying to get through it quickly. I'm not trying to make a perfect model. I'm just trying to create some basic forms here. For example, how am I going to connect the base to the bottom? What if I had like a little tube in here? Some sort of axle that came off. I don't know. I'm literally just playing here. I'm not really worried about making a perfect piece of geometry at the moment. I'm just trying to figure out what this may look like. I really don't know where I'm going with this either. This could work, or it could monumentally not work. But that's okay. I want to know that it doesn't work pretty early on in this entire sequence, so they can make a change. That's interesting. There's some fun stuff in here. Here's some suggestions that will help you make something that looks a little bit more intentional. Small little tapers in your forms go a long, long way in creating visual interest. Okay? For example, if you look at the top part of this little tubey thing, which is maybe some sort of science fiction-y connector thingamajig between the base of my character and this wheel down here. If you look at all these polygons, they don't change their proportion and shape along the length of the polygons. Okay? One small change here, what would it look like if I just started to scale and, oops, I grabbed the wrong one, excuse me. What would it look like if I scaled that cap down a little bit? That's interesting. What if we went the other way? That's interesting too. Maybe the whole thing is just globally a little bit too big. But changing the tapers in here can be a fun way to very quickly, and I mean very quickly, get you where you need to go. Okay? Don't make everything 90-degree angles from one another. Okay? Oh, shoot, let's see. If you give me 1 second here, I can show you probably the best example of this that I have. Here, let me grab my thumb drive in my office 2 seconds, and then I'll show you something here. That's a better illustration of this idea than my little guy that I'm making live in front of you. I'm making a robot for my GCOM 401 class. Okay, so I'm making a robot for GCOM 401. If you take GCOM 401 with you next semester, you're likely to see this robot in play. I've been working on it for a bit, and I finally got it to a point where I can call the geometry pretty done, excuse me. And I'm hoping it's on this thumb drive. If it's not, I'm in trouble. I was 100% sure 2 seconds ago it was on here. Oh no. Yeah, okay, great. It was on here. I was just looking in the wrong folder. Okay, so this is the robot that I'm making for GCOM 401. Okay, and I went through this exact same process not too long ago. And of course, I always start with reference. Okay, I knew that there's going to be some components in here that I wanted to use as inspiration. For this particular robot, I wanted it to be one of those gigantic kind of mechanized like auto arms that you see in these a lot of auto manufacturing plants. So this was some of the inspiration that I pulled. Okay, pretty good stuff. That's actually a screenshot of the model itself. So inspiration here of forms and ideas. Okay, and then let's get into it a little bit. Okay, so this is not what I wanted to show you. This is what I wanted to show you, okay? I can't recommend enough working in 2D when you're exploring these shapes. It allows you to iterate very, very quickly. Just a two-dimensional model for the most part. I knew that my little robot arm was going to be sitting on a base, okay? So that was something that I wanted to prototype and get into action very, very quickly. But what did that shape look like? I was inspired by some of the existing reference that I saw, but I also thought it might be kind of fun to bring in some natural elements too. In every sense, a swan was a part of my original design. I was like, that, to mix some organic ideas and bring nature into our mechanical shapes is always a good idea. So that's where this whole thing, from profile, it has kind of this swan shape to it a little bit. Since these are all very simple parts and pieces, I can move pretty fast, and I'm not trying to make a perfect model, okay? A lot of times what I see 3D modelers doing is that they try to make the final finished form initially. It's the first thing they do. So I'm gonna take care of my own time here, and I'm just gonna make the finished product the first time I sit down and do it. Well, don't do that. Work in a whole series of passes. Explore the shapes. This is not at all where I began. This is where I end up during my initial kind of creation stage. I had other ideas, and as I start to put these ideas down on the scene here, they changed. Okay, what works in your brain very rarely works in 3D. Okay, so you need to get it out of your brain and into a form, into a basic form that allows you to change it. Okay, your idea becomes real the moment you put it down on paper. Okay. So this is my ideation stage for my robot. And then I started to rough it out a little bit, okay? So then I actually start putting it into 3D, and I'm still keeping it pretty basic, pretty blocky. I'm not trying to create a final finished, polished model initially. Okay, let's go on to my rough model. Now I'm starting to explore, okay, what are the actual dimensions of this thing? How big are these gigantic cylinders in the back? What does this arm look like? How am I going to connect this arm up here to that arm down there? If I want both of these pieces to move in conjunction with each other, with the rig, how is that going to fundamentally work? Is there a way that I can change the mesh that gives me posability of my character going forward? These are all questions that I ask myself as I'm going through this initial stage, okay? And then when I'm happy with it, I start to add more detail. So if you look at the layers of detail that I'm adding here, this is where I began, okay? Pretty basic. 10 minutes or so of work of just exploring shape and volume, right? And then I do one layer up of detail where I start extruding those simple shapes. And instead of having a profile, now maybe it's a cylinder that I start to bevel out. It's a great, great way to figure out if your two-dimensional design is going to work in 3D. We don't have a lot of geometry in here yet, right? So it's a good time for us to make some changes to it, okay? If it's not working now, And I want you to hear this. This is an important idea. And this took me personally a long time to understand. If it's not working now, it's never going to work. Okay? If it's not working in its most fundamental DNA level parts and pieces, the high resolution, high detail one is not going to work. It's still going to be a bad design, right? It's still just going to be fundamentally a bad character. Okay? So you got to get this base version done and to a point where you're happy with it, pretty early on, so they can start layering in the details and getting closer and closer and closer to that final product. Now, I don't think in this version of the project file I have all my high resolution stuff done. Yeah, I'm figuring out where all my layers are going to be, how I'm going to separate the items so I can start posing this character later on. I think this is the one. This is the actual finished rig, or finished model. It's not rigged. Oh, it crashed. The Foundry doesn't want you guys to see my awesome model. Let's try this again. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take it off my thumb drive. Even though it's only 1.8 megabytes, reading it off the thumb drive can often be a problem. No, it really doesn't like it. Wow, this isn't even an old version. Let's try this again. You know what? I'm going to reset Moto real fast. Let's try this again. Okay. This is not uncommon. And the question is, do I want to open up Pandora's box and see if I can really solve the problem? Yeah, sure, why not? Because there's a configuration file that Moto creates on the back end that stores all of your user preferences and a lot of app preferences. And from time to time, that configuration file can get corrupt. Okay, something can get overwritten or not written correctly, or it's partially been rewritten by another session of the application. So you need to go in and delete that configuration file from time to time. On the Mac, it's really easy to do this. If you go to the Go window and hold down your Option key, they expose the secret backdoor to all the root files of your computer, your library. Now, there's a reason why this is secret on the Mac, because you can really destroy things pretty fast if you start fiddling around with the contents inside of your library. But specifically where we're going is that I'm going to go into my preferences. These are all the root preferences for every single file on the computer, right? And I'm looking for one that says com.loxology. There they all are, okay? And I'm just going to delete them. Delete them and empty the trash and restart Moto. And in doing so, we return Moto back to its factory defaults. On the PC, it's in a very different spot. And I don't know where that spot is off the top of my head. Yeah, this is good, because now I'm getting all my alerts. I'm getting the popover that I want. Let's see if it plays nicely now. It's going to melt. It's too awesome.
It'll just catch on fire.
No, it really doesn't like it. Wow. Okay, I'm gonna have to insist that you just take my word for it. Let's see. Maybe version 7 is. Moto doesn't like swans. Let's try it again. See what happens. No. Oh, so it's version 8. Something in version 8. Moto no likey. All right. So here's the actual high-resolution geometry. And this is where I'm going in and I'm adding a ton of stuff, okay? So this is not the cleaned up one. This is probably, I think version 8 is the one that's UV'd. So this one's completely destroyed. Okay, here's all the high-res based stuff. Okay. Now, oh man, this one not have my cool little pincher arms on it. Oh, that's a bummer. Okay. Well, either way, time to make some lemonade. All right. So in every sense, so this is not the complete one. Oh, some stuff got ugly subdivided. Okay. But, we went from a pretty basic, pretty simple, low-resolution mesh into something that's got a tremendous amount of detail. And I like doing all this stuff. This is my mad scientist-like moments, right? All right, I like doing things like that. It's a lot of fun for me. But I wouldn't be able to get to this spot in my character, and I'm so bummed that this doesn't have the pincher arms. I modeled like the actual pincher arms and stuff. I'm pretty sure that's in version 8, so I really hope it's not corrupt, because that was really cool. But this is starting to look pretty cool. I'm pretty happy with it. But you can't get to this level of detail by, in that first pass. You have to give yourself an opportunity to explore the shape and make some decisions as you go along the way, right? So give yourself that opportunity. It really is important. Just don't sit down and go, I want to make something cool, and then, whatever it is that you make is it, right? Tell yourself when you sit down, I'm going to make something cool, but I don't know what it is yet, right? Be inspired by something. Nature is a great place to be inspired by. Next week, yep. So you have 6 days instead of 7. You can do it. Yeah, and actually, Kim brings up an important point. I don't think I mentioned this at the beginning of class today. But Veterans Day is on Monday, okay? So the campus is going to be closed on Monday. The entire campus is going to be closed on Monday. So all the labs, the library is going to be closed. Counseling is going to be closed. Yeah, it's going to be a true 3-day. Now, the holiday is Monday, not Saturday. So if you're coming to the lab on Saturday, it will be open. The design lab and the rest of the campus will be open on Saturday. It's just Monday. It's just Monday. Okay? So one thing to remember as you go through this process of creating a character is find the human elements. Find the human elements inside your character, okay? All good characters have an emotional core that we need to bubble to the surface. Don't forget about that emotional core, that soul. What brings your character to life, okay? For me, it's unfortunate because I think it's in version 8. Actually, I know it's in version 8, which I'm kind of panicking right now that it could be correct. Like, maybe the one on my laptop isn't corrupted. For me, that pincher arm at the front turns into the entire face of my character. That's how I get to emote, okay? When you see it in action, it surprisingly works very, very well because the pincher creates a little mouth, a mouth shape, and that turns into a shape that I can expand and contract and start to emote through that. It's a really cool little mechanism that I've made. I'm pretty happy with it. So find something in your character that will serve as the emotional core. Imagine that you're going to be an animator making this character to come to life. How is this animator going to be manipulating the shape to produce the emotional performance that's required for a film? Okay? So find that hook. Nature is a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful place to be inspired from. Okay? Nature's done all the hard work for us. You don't have to look too far in nature to find something that's truly spectacular. Okay? If you're stuck, make composites. Take a fish and R2-D2 and marry them together somehow. I don't know what that would look like, although that would be a fun challenge. A robot fish, right? An R2-D2 fish, right? Yeah. I think, marry an idea together, see where it takes you. Okay? One thing that I would recommend that you try to stray away from are really, really angular shapes, okay? Like super angular shapes. Hit that tab key, subdivide some stuff, okay? Start incorporating some smooth curved panels into your design, and it's amazing how quickly this robot form now takes on an organic life, okay? A robot does not necessarily have to be a Oh boy, the first thing that popped into my mind was Johnny Five from Short Circuit. You guys remember that? Yeah. It doesn't have to be something that's mechanical, okay? A robot, especially if you look at the robots that we're making now. Shoot, if you want to be inspired, go look at the Boston Dynamics stuff. The robots that Boston Dynamics is making is next level. Have you guys seen those? The robots that are like literally doing parkour by themselves and backflips. It blows my mind, right? Be inspired by those gadgets, okay? Because I think that's a good indication of where robotics has taken us, okay? And use that as a foundation for what it is that you're trying to create. So find that emotional core. Bring that emotional core to the surface with humanoid-like qualities, and you're in the ballpark. Be inspired by nature, and I think you're gonna find this project is gonna be pretty fun. Okay, sound good? Work in passes. Okay, don't sit down and just make a high-resolution poly in the first session. Okay, you're not gonna get something good. Okay, allow yourself to explore the idea. Okay. I remember when I was in high school, I had a teacher of mine preach at the top of his lungs that you never swing at the first pitch in baseball, right? And this instructor of mine, actually, his name was Major Barker, and Major Barker was a pretty driving and influential person in my life. I was in Marine Corps Junior ROTC all the way through high school, and for almost until I was about 21, I was planning on having a career in the military. Following in my dad's footsteps. That was my life plan for the moment, okay? And when I was in high school, this ROTC instructor, we had a softball team, and I was on the softball team, and he said, never swing at the first pitch. And I never understood that statement at all until I was much older, right? Because I remember sitting at the softball game with all of my friends. We were playing softball, and I went up to the plate, and lo and behold, first pitch came, and it was just right across the center of the plate, going exactly the speed that I needed to, and I smashed it, right? And that ball went sailing way out into the outfield, and I had a pretty victorious kind of moment, right? Didn't make a home run, but I definitely allowed my team to score some points. And the moment I got back to the bench, I remember Major Barker ripping into me, and he yelled at me. He's like, "You're never supposed to swing at the first pitch. This is not how we play this game." And it was this big conversation, and it kind of got heated, and he benched me the rest of the game. And I remember stewing on the bench for hours, being generally upset that I was not going to play the rest of the game for doing something that I thought was a pretty good thing, right? And then it dawned on me as to why we never swing at the first pitch. Does anyone want to take a guess at why, generally speaking, swinging at the first pitch in baseball or choosing your initial first idea is a bad idea? Is a bad direction to go in? You're not prepped? Okay, maybe. Yep, I like it. That's a good idea. Why else? So don't we want to choose the first idea that pops into our mind?
You might think of a better idea later.
Bingo! You take yourself out of the game for the second, third, and fourth, and what could be the most amazing fifth idea that you never even consider, right? The whole idea behind never swinging at the first pitch is that the second pitch could be even slower, could be even more perfect, and could give you the opportunity to score a home run, right? Exactly. So never swing at your first idea, because your second idea could be by a magnitude better, okay? So give yourself that opportunity to explore these ideas. I always think that whenever I design something, that initially it's going to be horrible, and I know it's going to be horrible, right? And it's going to be pretty bad for a while until I find the correct solution to this creative problem, okay? Don't lock yourself in by making a high-resolution mesh in the first 5 minutes. It really does limit your creative process. Questions, comments, concerns about what we're doing over the next 7 days? Yeah.
Is it a convenient way to, like the example robots you showed us, were not arranged symmetrically like they were posed?
Yeah.
Is there a convenient way to be able to switch back and forth between that symmetrical pose
And like a T pose?
Yeah.
Not really, not a convenient way. Yeah. Ideally, and this is kind of the tough part about our craft, is that we want to model something at the T pose, and then we can pose it later. Right? It's just a whole lot easier to model when everything's aligned globally to the XYZ axes, and then we can go in and pose it later. Yeah, I remember doing a Medusa head once, and Medusa has all the snakes coiled on her head, right? Well, I modeled all the snakes going out, and then I deformed them into these lovely coils at the end of the day, right? So the posing, that's where it kind of gets a little bit more complex. In this class, we're not going to go back and forth. In 410, when we talk about the full rigging tool set, it's different, but there's not an easy way of doing it, unfortunately. Yeah. Okay, other questions, comments? Good luck. May the force be with you. Have a wonderful 3-day weekend. I'll see you guys next week. Yeah, it's 4:30. It's time to go home. Yeah.
Sorry about for running out.
Okay.